Modern humans find the history of the Earth simple, understandable, and long known. It seems that you can just turn on a video about another history and learn everything in 25 minutes. Partly, this is true, but it is important to remember that these are just superficial data presented briefly, while in reality, the Earth holds many mysteries. What about the whole billion years that has somehow disappeared from the history of our planet? This mystery is epically called the Great Discrepancy, and scientists are still arguing about how this could have happened. But the fact remains that we know quite well what happened on Earth 550 million years ago. We also know what happened 1.5 billion years ago, but that billion years in between is a mystery. Why did this happen? Make yourself comfortable, friends. You are in for a snowy Earth. Problems with the magnetic field, sudden extinctions, and one of the most interesting mysteries of modern times await you. Well, let's start with a little primer. Studying the past of our planet is like digging into a layered cake. The further back we want to look into the past, the deeper the layer we need to cut. Or we can go to places where there are natural fractures in the Earth, for example, the Grand Canyon in Arizona. Its depth reaches almost 2 kilometers, and the geological history of the Earth, as a result, is right at our fingertips. Here is a layer from one era, here is one from another. Take a drill, bring it, what you drilled to the laboratory, and study the history of the planet. That's what scientists do. And for example, they uncovered a rock in the canyon called Elvis Chasm, which is 1,840,000,000 years old. Considering that the Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, it turns out that we can study 40% of its history through the Grand Canyon. This is important because rocks can tell us everything. They contain knowledge about the atmosphere, water, and living beings that has been preserved for billions of years. You just need to know how to extract and decipher them from stone. Fortunately, geologists can do this now, and their profession remains unjustly in the shadows. For a moment, some of the most important specialists in the study of Mars are not engineers and, not even rocket builders. They are geologists, who with just the patterns of rocks and satellite analysis with surgical precision show when and where water flowed on Mars. Imagine what they can do on Earth, where there are tons of rocks that can be touched. One of the enthusiastic geologists was John Wesley Powell. In 1869, he set out on an expedition to the Grand Canyon to touch the history of the planet and dig deep into the layers of rock. Powell Canyon was so impressive that he called it the Library of the Gods for the knowledge that the canyon provides. However, when he started his calculations, a problem emerged. Sitting in a parking lot by one of the cliffs, John calculated that scientifically, considering the age of the Earth and the ancient rocks at the bottom, the cliff should be 3 kilometers high, while in reality, it was only 152 meters in front of him. Oops. Powell, scratching his head, referred to the issue as the Great Discrepancy. A discrepancy because there were indeed old rocks at the bottom but younger ones at the top. And great because there was a missing layer of rocks from almost a third of Earth's history. Where did they go? More than a century and a half has passed since then, and scientists have clearer data. The oldest rock samples that John looked at are indeed almost 2 billion years old. The younger ones are about 500 to 550 million years old, but they are layered on top of each other. There are simply no intermediate rocks in the Grand Canyon. No one can find an intermediate layer that is 1 billion years old, or let's say 900 million. There are only super old ones, and behind them, super young ones. The canyon also has other inconsistencies. Rocks have been erased by 175, 500, or 725 million years. Erased by 175, 500, or 725 million years. Furthermore, it has come to light that exactly the same process was observed 100 years before Powell by another scientist, James Hutton, only in Scotland, in the Sycamore Point area. However, his dating and the scale of the problem were different. On Frenchman Mountain, east of Las Vegas, the same situation exists as in the Grand Canyon. There, rocks aged 1.7 billion years coexist peacefully with rocks aged 520 million years. It is also unclear where the missing time in between has gone. Tourists are now even offered a special route to see the very spot where a quarter of Earth's history has disappeared. Stephen Marshak, a professor at the University of Illinois, claims that such discrepancies exist everywhere on Earth. The Grand Canyon is just a unique place where the fault literally thrusts it in people's faces. In Siberia or Europe, however, to reach layers of such ancient age, one would need to drill several kilometers deep. But Stephen guarantees that if you do manage to drill down, you will encounter exactly the same thing. Rocks with an age difference of over 1 billion years will be lying on top of each other. According to the geologist, the problem is global, and it would be great for prevention to allocate money not for the search for a new gender, but for solving this mystery. After all, if we put it briefly, it doesn't exist. It looks like about 500 million years ago, aliens came to Earth, stole a layer of rock that was 1 billion years old, loaded it into their spaceships, and flew away. Just like your dad, who as a child stole sand every New Year to set up a Christmas tree. The only thing modern scientists understand is that the loss of soil is related to several complex processes at once. It used to be fashionable to look for something singular that would solve all problems. Now the approach is broader, and there are several candidates to explain where a piece of our planet has gone. The first theory is the snowball Earth. In short, the theory suggests that at various times in history, our planet was completely covered in ice, resembling an endless desert, just like the moon of Saturn and Enceladus, for example. The essence is that the universe is governed by chaos, and even seemingly calm glaciers are actually moving, simply because they are too heavy and the lower layers cannot support all that mass. It's something like a button on a jacket of a very heavy person. A vivid example right now is Greenland, whose surface looks torn and jagged. This is because some of the glaciers are slowly moving, and when they do this, they also drag the Earth along with them. After all, that's what a glacier is for, to freeze the surface beneath it. Scientists believe that if the Earth was covered in snow for millions of years, glaciers could have stolen rocks, tearing them apart and dragging them along. Only the oldest ones remained below, and 500 million years ago, everything melted away. Thus, two types of rocks coexist with each other. The second theory is the destruction of the supercontinent. It is no secret that tectonic plates are also in motion. They do not remove the mufflers from car exhaust pipes, but instead periodically either merge into one large continent or separate. Geologists, for example, predict that in 500 or 100 million years, Africa will collide with Europe, and the Mediterranean Sea will cease to exist. Similar processes occurred in the past, resulting in the familiar single Pangaea, and there are several candidates for the title of supercontinents: Canarland, Pannotia, Nuna, and others. One of them is Rodinia. It formed about 1 billion years ago and broke apart 750 million years ago. According to the theory, erosion and tectonic plate shifts destroyed the layer that we cannot find now. It turned to dust, settled in volcanoes, and so on. There are other notable theories, but the most interesting thing is that the Great Discrepancy mysteriously aligns with 3 key events in Earth's history. First, there's the Cambrian explosion, another mystery of humanity. The essence is that for billions of years, life on Earth was sparse, sad, and not very diverse. And about 542 million years ago, the planet burst forth. From this moment on, there begins a sharp increase in the number of remains of living beings, which also became different, started to acquire skeletons, and even began to hunt others. Since the Cambrian explosion, Earth has received the laws of nature, by which we more or less live to this day. Now, scientists have somewhat toned down their enthusiasm and say that the explosion was not so rapid, but lasted millions of years. But what is important for us is that it interestingly coincided with the end of the Great Discrepancy, when the rocks returned. The second interesting coincidence is magnetic. Geologists from the University of Rochester stated last August that 565 million years ago, the strength of Earth's magnetic field dropped to 10% of its current level. This is incredibly little. Solar radiation pierced all living things like a knife through butter. The work of the magnetic field is connected to the core of our planet, and something strange was obviously happening with it during this era. But even stranger is that the magnetic field returned to normal just in time for the Cambrian explosion of life, which may well not be a coincidence. But again, the sudden end of the era of incongruity in rock formations may also not be a coincidence. The third coincidence, the first major extinction of animals, the Ediacaran biota, which lived just before the Cambrian explosion, went extinct by 80% about 550 million years ago. This is also fresh research from November 2022. The guys from Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University loudly declared that everything and everywhere on Earth was literally going extinct, regardless of habitat. Well, what happened to them, as usual, is unclear. This coincidence is also interesting, as far too many epic events occurred 500 million years ago. Perhaps all of them can somehow be connected. The main thing in this matter is not to make hasty statements and not to rush. As you can see, despite the beautiful picture, The history of the Earth is a dark forest with hundreds of mysteries, answers to questions that could easily change the life of even a modern person. For example, confirmation of the snowball Earth theory would undermine all current climate calculations and elevate them to a new level. And the Great Discrepancy is one of the most challenging mysteries for which we first need to understand extinctions, supercontinents, glaciers, and dozens of other things. This will most likely happen long after our lifetime. Until we meet again, friends. Thank you.